Imagine someone who really gets to the top of their game in science, internationally. Advanced degrees, loads of research.
Right, like really cutting edge stuff.
Exactly. And then they make this conscious choice, a deliberate move to bring all that expertise back home, specifically to a place maybe a bit more remote where it can make a huge difference.
What drives that? That's the question. How does that kind of deep personal commitment mix with doing really high level science?
Well, that's exactly the fascinating mix we're digging into today. We're looking at the work and journey of Dr. Dirgha Raj Joshi. He's a pharmacist and medicinal chemist working in Nepal.
And for this deep dive, we're drawing directly from his own website. So we've got excerpts covering his background, his research descriptions, some of his writings like blog posts, and details on this really unique book project he's involved with.
Yeah, so our mission here is to sort of piece all this together. We want to get a feel for Dr. Joshi, the scientist, sure,
Yeah.
but also the thinker, the community member.
We'll explore his research, which is surprisingly deep, his views on, bigger picture stuff, and how he's using his knowledge in ways you might not expect, really giving back.
Okay, let's jump right in.
So Dr. Joshi's journey, it's definitely interesting. He started out with a bachelor's in pharmacy from Pokhara University right there in Nepal, a solid local foundation.
But then he made a pretty significant move, didn't he? Headed off to South Korea for grad school.
He did. Got his master's in medicinal chemistry at Wonkwang University, and then went even further for his PhD in the same field, but at Yonsei University.
And Yonsei, well, that's a highly respected name internationally, isn't it? Especially known for its research. So these aren't small achievements. We're talking major league academics.
Absolutely. Getting that kind of expertise from places like Yonsei, that's a big deal on the world stage. But what really stands out in the material, I think, is his decision after getting all that international experience. He came back to Nepal.
Right, and the sources say he's now an assistant professor of medicinal chemistry at Karnali Academy of Health Sciences, or KAHS, and that's in Jumla.
Yeah, Jumla, which for people who might not know isn't one of the big cities like Kathmandu. It's a more specific, somewhat remote region.
And that choice to go back and specifically to work there, it really seems to connect with this quote from his site. It was in Nepali originally, but the meaning given is something like.
Yeah, it's powerful. Approximately, the future of a country whose youth do not see their future within their own country can never be bright.
Wow, that really lands, doesn't it? It feels like more than just a saying. It sounds like a guiding principle.
It really does. And when you map his story onto going abroad, gaining pop skills, and then consciously choosing to return to work in Nepal, to build his career there, it feels like he's living that philosophy. He's investing his future where he thinks it matters most for the country's future.
It gives his role at KHS in Jumla a different weight. It's not just an academic post. It seems like a very intentional move to put his high-level skills to work, maybe to help build something locally.
And that idea of building, of applying knowledge, you see it in his research focus too. The sources highlight his main areas: drug discovery, developing new ways to actually make molecules synthetic methodologies, and specifically antiviral drug development.
And the output is quite something: over 30 publications, multiple patents mentioned. That signals a really productive, innovative researcher.
Definitely. Let's look at a couple of the specific research examples mentioned on the site. One title is about regioselective synthesis of 1-cyano-3-arylindolazines. It mentions using DDQ and building pyrrole units.
Okay, hold on. Regioselective synthesis, indolazines, sounds pretty technical. Can we break that down a bit?
Yeah.
What are indolazines, and why does making them regioselectively matter?
Good question. So think about making molecules like super precise chemistry. Indolazines are a specific type of molecule, a kind of structural framework that chemists are interested in, because variations of this structure often show up in potential medicines or materials.
Okay, so like a useful base structure.
Exactly. And regioselective. That means you're doing the chemical reaction, adding a piece or changing something at one specific spot on that base structure. Not just randomly, you're controlling where it happens.
Control.
Control is key, using specific tools like this DDQ chemical mentioned, and building specific components like pyrrole units as part of the bigger structure. It's all about precision, building the exact molecule you want for a specific purpose.
Right, because if you're aiming for something that interacts with biology, like a drug, the exact shape and structure is everything.
Precisely. There's another example mentioned: synthesis of polyfunctionalized indolazines via 5+1 annulative access to pyridines. Still working with those indolazine structures, but the focus here is polyfunctionalized.
Polyfunctionalized. Sounds like adding lots of different bits and pieces to it. like decorating the base structure.
That's a good way to put it. Adding different chemical groups or functional groups, these additions can drastically change how the molecule behaves, its solubility, how it might bind to a target in the body, its stability.
Okay.
And the method described 5+1 annulative access. That's just a chemist's way of describing how they build another part of the molecule, the pyridine ring in this case. It refers to a specific strategy using pieces that combine in a 5+1 fashion to form that ring.
So these examples are both about finding smart, controlled ways to build or tweak these potentially useful molecular shapes. It's like the fundamental toolbox for drug discovery, isn't it?
It really is. And the third example listed really drives that home. Domino 4+2 annulation access to quinone-inosine hybrids. This one brings in another type of structure, quinones, and the source explicitly says the goal is creating molecules with potential anti-cancer properties.
Ah, so now we're seeing a direct link. Not just building interesting molecules, but aiming specifically for structures that might fight cancer. That's moving from basic chemistry towards potential therapies.
Exactly. And there's another interesting detail about this specific method. It's described as atom economical and environment friendly.
Atom economical. What does that mean, practically speaking?
It means the reaction is designed really efficiently. Most of the atoms you start with in your ingredients end up in the final molecule you want. You don't waste many atoms as unwanted byproducts.
Okay, so less waste. That sounds more efficient, maybe cheaper too, and definitely better for the environment.
Precisely. Better use of materials, less chemical waste to deal with, so it's greener. This research isn't just about finding any way to make these potential anti-cancer compounds, but finding a smarter, more sustainable way.
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting, I think. When you consider how developing these precise, efficient building methods is just so fundamental, it's the bedrock for creating new drugs or materials.
You need these tools before you can even start testing if something works.
Right. And making those tools atom economical, that adds a whole other layer of practicality, especially perhaps in settings where resources might be more constrained.
And Dr. Joshi's interests, according to the sources, clearly go beyond the lab bench. We see that in the blog posts and articles mentioned. For instance, one piece discusses Korea, the world's biggest investor in research, and talks about Asian nations aiming for Nobel Prizes.
So he's thinking on a bigger scale there. National science policy, the role of R&D investment, how countries compete and collaborate scientifically on the world stage. That's quite broad.
And another piece mentioned is titled COVID-19 Response. Can Nepal learn from South Korea? In it, he apparently contrasts South Korea's approach described as effective and systematic strategies with broader nationwide lockdowns.
Again, showing engagement with really critical public health issues, right? And thinking about policy, learning from international examples, specifically from a country where he studied. It connects science, policy, and society.
It definitely paints a picture of someone who sees science as embedded in a much larger context.
Yeah.
It's linked to national progress, public health strategy, not just isolated lab work.
And then, as if all that wasn't enough, there's this book project mentioned on his site. The title is Geltha, right by his site.
Which translates roughly to knowledge of medicine, healthy body life, something along those lines.
But the truly remarkable thing, the detail that just jumps out from the source material,
Yeah.
is that Dr. Joshi, the author, takes zero money from the book sales. None.
Wait, really? Zero.
That's what the source says. All the proceeds, 100%, go directly to support a local organization called Velatilitia, which means We Capable Women, for their charity work.
Wow. Okay, that's genuinely amazing. Writing a book to share expertise is one thing, but donating all the profits, that's a whole different level of commitment to social impact.
Incredible, isn't it? Using his knowledge not just for research or teaching, but as a direct engine for funding charitable work.
And the source gives some practical details, too. There was a first edition, about 100 pages, costing 200 Nepali rupees, then a second, expanded edition, around 200 pages, for 350 rupees. So pretty affordable, seems.
Very accessible.
Yeah.
And they've clearly thought about getting it out there. It's available in major places like Dongadi and Kathmandu, but also a whole list of other towns across Nepal are mentioned, plus online options, Daraz, ISOA payments.
And look at these special offers mentioned, a 10% discount if institutions like schools or orphanages buy copies for donation.
Nice.
And get this, free copies for registered nonprofits if they just email to ask. They offer nationwide delivery too, although the buyer pays for that bit.
I mean, think about the whole package there. A book designed to share useful health knowledge widely, priced accessibly, distributed broadly.
And the entire financial engine behind it is fueling local charities, supporting women's empowerment. It's such a direct link between specialized knowledge and tangible community good.
It really makes you, the listener, stop and think, doesn't it? How often do we see expertise channeled this directly into philanthropy? It's a powerful model.
So let's try and pull these threads together. We've seen Dr. Dirgha Raj Joshi's journey in Nepal to top-tier international training in South Korea and back to Nepal, specifically Jumla.
We've seen his high-level research in medicinal chemistry, building complex molecules, developing efficient methods, even targeting potential anti-cancer compounds.
Then there's his commentary, his thinking on broader issues like national science strategy and learning from global public health responses.
And finally, this incredibly generous book project, turning knowledge directly into charitable support for a local women's group. What's the synthesis here? What picture emerges?
Well, it really feels like he's embodying that quote he shared, doesn't it? Not just seeing a future for himself and his country, but actively using his considerable skills, scientific, intellectual, maybe even entrepreneurial with the book, to help build a better future there.
Yeah, it suggests a perspective where science isn't just an academic game, but a tool deeply connected to national development, community health, and just, well, doing good.
Looking at the material provided, we definitely see more than just an impressive CV. We see a researcher, yes, but also a thoughtful voice on policy and a very hands-on community contributor.
So it leaves us with a final thought, perhaps. Consider the kind of unique impact that's possible when individuals manage to bridge that gap, combining world-class specialized expertise, the kind you might gain on the global stage.
With a really deep, active commitment to their own local community, their home country.
What kind of new possibilities open up? What sorts of projects or initiatives can emerge when that high-level knowledge isn't just published in journals, but is deliberately translated, shared, and aimed squarely at tackling local challenges or powering local charitable work in ways we might not typically associate with, say, a medicinal chemist?